Hello, welcome to the Green Entrepreneurship MOOC. My name is Khanjan Mehta, and I'm at Lehigh University, where I serve as the inaugural Vice Provost for Creative Inquiry and Director of the Mount Up Initiative. As a quick background, I'm an electrical engineer by training, and a lot of my work is in designing and commercializing technologies focused on sustainable energy, on food security, and global health in several countries across sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. So far in the first week of this MOOC, you have studied the various definitions of entrepreneurship. You've taken a deeper dive into green entrepreneurship. Now you know what it means to be a green entrepreneur. You know what eco design is all about. You're aware of some of the trends that make green entrepreneurship particularly relevant in these times, and you know about some of the benefits of green entrepreneurship. And that is a lot of content, a lot of new ideas. And what I'm hoping to do in this talk is to really take you on a somewhat personal journey of what is likely one of my most successful ventures around low-cost greenhouses. So it's very much a green entrepreneurship venture. And my students and I have been working on this for almost 10 years. Since 2009, but frankly, 2016 is when we wrapped up the project, and we're not actively working on it anymore. But there is a lot that can be learned by just kind of looking at this personal story. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk about this venture called Grow Greenhouses. Grow, why grow? Because we want our farmers to grow vegetables all through the year. Instead of 1 or 2 crop cycles, we want them to grow vegetables all through the year. And GROW also stands for Greenhouses Revolutionizing Outputs. And that was the way we decided to brand it as we were going out and seeking resources to grow our grow ventures in several countries. So I'm going to talk about the venture. I'm going to talk about the technology, how it works, and then I'm going to look at the venture in terms of the pestle analysis, the political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental aspects of the venture, something that you will be studying in deep next week, actually. And finally, I'm going to share with you kind of the practical journey and how we got things funded and so on. So I would like to think that most of you know what a greenhouse is. Quite literally, it's a house for growing vegetables. And depending on where you are in the world, what the climatic conditions are, it has its own benefits. So if you're in a place where it's too hot, it keeps the temperature cold enough for the plants. If you're in a place where that is too cold, it extends the growing cycle and keeps the warm microclimate so that your plants can grow inside this environment. If it rains too much, which is happening quite a bit with climate change, it protects your fertilizer from getting washed off or your seeds from getting washed off, right? So no matter where you are in the world, greenhouses can be helpful in horticulture. So our greenhouses, there are three reasons why our customers buy these greenhouses. One is they support year-round growth. So instead of getting 1 or 2 crop cycles, you can have 4, sometimes even 5 crop cycles. They reduce water consumption by as much as 60%. In some cases, in Mozambique, for example, we found that the water usage is reduced by as much as 90%. Which is a really significant factor. And most importantly, compared to some of our competitors that sell larger greenhouses for $6,000, our greenhouses with a 35 square meter area, 5.5 by 6 meter dimensions, cost about $1,000. So they are significantly cheaper and they pay for themselves very quickly. So how do we go about building these greenhouses? We have various ways in which we find the customers, and they come to us, we take away their money, and we build the greenhouses in a span of just 2 days. And this is a really important design constraint and one that we have stayed with from the very beginning. So day one, we clear out the plot of land. By the end of the day, we have the frame built, which you can see the picture in the top right corner here. So that's at the end of day one, the frame is built. The second day, around maybe 2 in the afternoon, we have put the glazing on top of the greenhouse. It's good to go. And then we spend the final 2 or 3 hours educating our farmers on how to switch from from open air farming to greenhouse farming, or how to jumpstart greenhouse farming if they don't have a deep if they don't have deep experience with open air farming. And as you can see in that picture, we do that through a visual guide that is installed on a Kindle device, which all our employees on the ground have access to. So 2 days, and you go from an open plot of land to your greenhouse built. So there are three use cases. There are three ways in which our farmers use these greenhouses. The most common one is to go from seed to harvest. So you plant the seeds, and 3 months later you will get your tomatoes or you'll get your bell peppers. And most of our farmers will rotate the crops to replenish the nutrients in the soil. And they've seen that the yields are substantially larger. And since they are protected from pests, the quality of the vegetables also tends to be much better than what you would get with open air farming. So you go from seed to harvest, or some of our farmers go from seed to transplant. So they plant the seeds, and they will wait for the seedlings to be about a foot tall, like 12 inches high, and then they will transplant them into open farms. And this way, they can have a real multiplier effect, and they can plant these seedlings in tens of acres of land. This is a huge moneymaker for a lot of our farmers, because if it's too hot, the seeds might not germinate. Whereas here you have control over the microclimate, and so you only so the germination rates are significantly higher, almost 90%, and then they are more likely to be successful when they're out in the field. The third way in which these are used is by just growing and selling seedlings. And so these so there are entrepreneurs who use our greenhouses to grow seedlings and sell them to commercial farmers, sell them to just regular people in the community who might plant a few seedlings in their backyard so that they can have fresh vegetables for their own consumption or for selling into the marketplace. So there are three ways in which these greenhouses are used. So there are two ways in which we sell these greenhouses. The first, the most obvious one, is an asset sale model, where we sell the greenhouses to farmers, to commercial farmers, smallholder farmers, and we take away their money. So for between $800 to $1,000, they can buy the small greenhouse. And we also have much larger greenhouses, which obviously cost more than that. But then in the rural area, so most of these asset sales happen in the peri-urban areas where the farmers have a ready market, mostly in the urban areas, for vegetables all through the year. They make a lot of money, for example, growing tomatoes or bell peppers in the off-season when the cost of tomatoes is thrice as much. But in the rural areas, we take a very different approach, and we have a cost recovery-based model. So that's where we typically have women's group that invest in these greenhouses, and they put down 10%, 20% as a down payment, and then they pay back the rest of the money over an 18-month period. And we found that the repayment rate is close to 90%, which we are incredibly proud of. And that way we are empowering these women in the rural areas. So what do the profits look like with a simple technology like this? We see that small agro enterprises can triple their profits. Women's groups, once they figure out how to work together, not always easy, their profits are 5 times as much. And then we have commercial farmers, like one of our legendary farmers in Mozambique, Arthur Mukachua. He's made a killing, like made over $100,000 with a $1,200 investment into greenhouses that he uses to grow seedlings. So the profits for commercial farmers for such a simple technology can be absolutely, absolutely enormous. And there's a beautiful trickle down, because they tend to then pay their employees 25 to 50% more, and everybody benefits. And of course, we make a profit while doing this. So this is how the technology works, how it is used. And we have greenhouse ventures that are partners in Kenya, in Cameroon, in Mozambique, Sierra Leone, and a few other countries that we've worked with over the years. So when we look at these greenhouses from a sustainability perspective, going back to this fundamental idea that sustainable development, it's really about development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. A really useful tool that you will be learning in depth is a pestle analysis, and that refers to looking at ideas, opportunities, ventures from a social, technological, environmental, economic, political, and legal perspective. So you use a pestle analysis looking forward, but it's also helpful to do a pestle analysis looking backwards. So when we look at some of the pestle aspects of this venture from a technological perspective, our entire design is cradle to cradle. All our materials are available locally. The wood, everything is sourced locally, except for the plastic covering that is imported from Israel. And we tried a number of different things, and we found that this particular covering just worked the best. And we said it was worth it, despite the foreign exchange fluctuations, despite the supply chain difficulties. It just worked beautifully well, and so we import this glazing. We actually, at one point, got a grant to use rice bags coated with a certain material that would give it similar properties. And it actually worked. We went back to our farmers, and they said, you know what? We'd rather pay $100 more for this cool-looking plastic covering than use these rice bags, because that's what our neighbors have, and we want our greenhouses to look cool, right? But this is a really important consideration. This is an aspirational product, and ultimately, we have to listen to our customers. And so we give them greenhouses that work. They have a lifespan of at least 10 years. We've had greenhouses for more than 10 years where the structure is still standing. If something breaks, they're very modular. You can get another piece of wood and just replace the broken one, and it'll work just as fine. From an environmental perspective, as I said earlier, it's all cradle to cradle. It's highly modular. And when something fails, we toss it back into Mother Earth, and we're not polluting the environment. From an economic perspective, we found that the typical return on investment is 6 to 9 months. So if farmers make this $1,000 investment, buy a greenhouse, the vast majority of them recover their capital within 3 crop cycles, sometimes 2 crop cycles, sometimes with just one single crop cycle. In 3 months, we have farmers that have recovered their capital investment, which is a really good number. If that return on investment is more than a year, that would probably lead to the venture not being as successful. So for your own ventures, you want to try to keep that return on investment at less than a year. From a social perspective, we could have completely focused on commercial farmers, focused on urban markets, and we could have made a much higher profit. But for us, this is a social enterprise. We have 3 goals. It's impact, it's impact, and it's impact. And so we made the decision to work in the rural areas, work with women's groups, work with smallholders, give them greenhouses on a loan basis and have them pay us back. It's not the loan that's the difficulty. The challenge is that we work with a lot of farmers who don't have much experience with horticulture. And horticulture is a culture. It's something that you learn over time. And so it requires a lot of ongoing support from our staff to get these smallholders comfortable with growing vegetables, learning how to access the markets, learning how to negotiate the rates, and so on. But that's part of our mission, and that's very important to us. From a legal perspective, we did run into issues, for example, with supply chains, with regulations on use of plastics, regulations on using certain kinds of timber, because other kinds of timber, which we actually never used, are not good for the environment. And so we are very cognizant of what kinds of timber we use to build our greenhouses. We typically use timber that is considered a weed, which means that 1, it's available at a lower price, and 2, there are no stringent regulations on the use of, for example, blue gum in Kenya, which is considered a weed. So we try to use the local species. We also find that they actually work really well with termites and other pests. So that works out all around, but we work with various regulatory bodies as and when needed to make sure that we are on the right side of the law. From a political perspective, we work with various government entities. For example, in Kenya, we work with the soil a research institute that provides soil testing for our farmers, and that is mandatory. So you cannot buy a greenhouse from us unless you've conducted soil testing and you have a good idea of what you need to do differently to get your soil ready for greenhouse farming. Or in Mozambique, we work closely with the government to identify the best farmers who could benefit the most from our greenhouses. So we don't rely on the government. They don't get anything for free from us. We don't expect anything from them except the knowledge sharing. And that's a win-win because now their farmers are doing well. That makes them happy. That makes them look good. We get more business. We find the best farmers who would benefit from this technology. So it's important to work with the political structures. So if I think about this whole ecosystem, we don't just build greenhouses. We also provide agronomic support. We provide logistics support. For example, we bring together farmers on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis to help them find better ways to access the market, find new markets for their products, to coordinate what they're growing and when. So there's a lot of capacity building happening. We connect them with various carpenters that can provide that can help with maintaining these greenhouses if something breaks. And we also help build partnerships for our local in-country partners to help the farmers get access to capital. In other words, a single product, if we would have just built the greenhouses and said, okay, we're done, we would never have been successful. We have to take an end-to-end approach and think about every single part of this ecosystem that will make our customers, that will make our farmers successful. And this, I cannot stress how important this is for all of you as you think about your own ventures. How are you creating sustainable value for your customers? Your customer success is your success. Your product success alone is not. So you have to have an extreme customer focus on how you empower them. And so to make this happen, we didn't just design the greenhouse, but we designed a whole bunch of artifacts, more than 20 different things, from a construction manual to a quality control protocol, where our carpenters that build these greenhouses make 2/3 of their salary when they build the greenhouse over 2 days. The other third of the salary is based on 50 points in this checklist. And if they hit every single aspect of this of the greenhouse, we tell them exactly how many nails go onto each post. And if they get it all right, they get the whole amount, else they have some of that money cut. We have various protocols for water savings, for data management, to see how our farmers are doing. We have, in terms of agronomic support, we have case management systems where we get photos of pests, we share them with experts, we give our customers feedback on what they could be doing differently, what kind of insecticide or remediation is needed to fix the problem. So that's how the venture works. It's building this whole ecosystem takes a while, but having this ensemble in place helps you get started on this journey right away. And then anywhere from 6 months to 2-3 years, you can build up this ecosystem and strengthen it and keep supporting more and more and more farmers. There is so much we have learned over this 6-7 year journey. If I were to quickly capture a few, the first is that impact takes time. Entrepreneurship is a long journey. There are no overnight results, and it took us about 7 years to get to this point where we have all these different independent enterprises. You got to keep pivoting. You have to keep talking to your customers, understanding what works for them, what does not work for them. And I can tell you umpteen stories of how our product has evolved over time. And every single pivot has been driven by insights from our customers. So you have to keep talking to your customers. When something doesn't work, you have to change course and not get too emotionally attached or let your egos get in the way of success. You have to design for very specific price points. Two people, 2 days, $200. And so think about what is that price point, because that's $200 in materials, but the overheads can be so high that by the time you really look at the final cost, it ends up costing $600 or $800 for our customers with almost no profit because of the high overheads. So you have to be very realistic with what some of these costs might look like ultimately when the product reaches your customer. And this is just one example of a green entrepreneurship venture. When I look at the Sustainable Development Goals and I think about all my experiences over the years working across Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, there are thousands and thousands of opportunities for such value creation out there. And it's really exciting to see all of you embark on this journey towards green entrepreneurship. It's a long journey, but it can be incredibly gratifying to get those ventures out there and to really empower people and improve the human condition. So thank you, and I wish you the best in your journey.